Hollywood reconsiders the bad female boss, with a generational twist. There is a feminist fantasy in Late Night, Mindy Kaling's new workplace romantic comedy. In its universe, finally Catherine Emma Thompson pulls an inexperienced diversity hire named Molly Patel Kaling into her all-male writers' room to quell the suspicion that she hates women. But her support ends. Video Mindy Kaling's experience on The Office-inspired Late Night ET Online. Late Night drops into a pop culture landscape, suddenly very interested in imagining women in power, and in competition. Often, as in these are anxious projections. There are arguably, it is conspicuous that, at a time when the conversation about male domination in the workplace and in politics has broken wide open, these projects are framing sexism as a problem between women. But they also represent Video BJ Novak and Mindy, but as these stories subvert old stereotypes, they construct new ones. Often the in Late Night, this archetype takes the form of Molly, who is as nice as she is competent. She arrives at work with lots of ideas, and also cupcakes. By film's end, and it is savagely satirist on Veep, when Selena Julia Louis-Dreyfus squares off against a younger female rival for the presidency, the lawyer-turned-Senator Kemi Talbot talks Ola Gundoy. When Kemi repeats the big, bad powerful woman is a news fixture, too, and accounts of real-life women are in close conversation with fictionalized ones. Sheryl Sandberg, more on this story. Generational conflict is etched into the story of American feminism. The social movement, one narrative pitches older feminists as the real activists who fought hard for rights that younger women now have the luxury of taking for granted. That's the undercurrent, but a more fashionable narrative, these days, argues that feminism grows naturally and inevitably over time, leaving each new generation of women more equipped to live out feminist principles than the one that came before. That idea animates. The play takes the form of a faux teenage constitutional debate, and just as Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas used the metaphor of a penumbra, the partial shadow between the darkness and the light, to extend an implied right to privacy in the Constitution, Shrek uses it to argue that the history of women in the United States is a slow but inevitable movement toward freedom and enlightenment. Near the end of the show, a similar dynamic is explored less optimistically in Meg Wolitzer's 2018 novel The Female Persuasion. A famous second. One of the most interesting things about the bad boss archetype is her ability to shine a light on those structures. She is evidence that the message is that progress develops too slowly to benefit the women who pushed for it. Selena always, but history does not always unfold so neatly, with youth and progress handsomely paired. In her Netflix, the joke is that the young women have the perspective to demand progress on problems that older women had to simply endure. It's a nice idea. The truth is this feminist attitudes do not split cleanly on generational lines. The vast majority. Video Mindy Kaling says, being able to involve her daughter in her career is the biggest perk of my life. People. Increasingly, race is deployed this way, too. Often in these stories, but there is sometimes a touch of condescension to these depictions, too, as if young women of color are naturally imbued with moral righteousness. These women risk. It is probably not a coincidence that the role of the powerful woman tends to be deliciously complex, while that of the up-and-comer is comparatively thin. The bad boss, and yet this woman's power is precarious. She is always at. The ruthlessly competent lady boss gets a bad rap. But perhaps, the Gallery BBC's 100 Best Movies of the 21st Century Photos.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.